Hello. So today I want to talk about forgiveness and understanding and really getting to the point of love. But that's a leap, I'm sure if you're even listening to me at this point, the you probably had issues in your life with your parents or with some figure that you looked up to. Could be adoptive parents, could be foster parents, could be, you know, aunts, uncles, whoever raised you. I think, as growing up, especially if there were issues that really hurt you and no one gave you the space to understand that, no one really understood it themselves, especially the people that were doing hurting you and making you feel less. They were shutting you down, hurting you physically, mentally. I I want to get to I have my own things, but it took me a long time to get to the point of forgiveness. And forgiveness is literally the first step. I mean, understanding, I guess you could say, is, but forgiveness is really jumping over that ledge and finally trying to let go of a victim mindset that holds you back in life. So, my dad is the easier one to talk about, and I think he was the easiest one for me to forgive. My parents had separated when I was 3 years old after my 2-month old sister passed away. So they had had this tension that, my dad ended up just taking me off to Florida to live with his parents. And he kind of spiraled from there. Um, but, I could say that throughout my entire relationship with him, it was pretty like it was standard in the sense that I knew him. He never changed or grew as a person. He kind of always stayed the same. I didn't understand that at first. At first, I seen him as like, dude, he could do anything. He could conquer the world. He would tell me these grand stories of him fighting 8 to 10 guys, or um, how he would rob a gas station and get away with it, or whatever the story might have been, some grand tale about aliens dropping down and hovering above the railroad tracks in front of him and his friends. But like, he was a good storyteller. He was great at it. I actually kind of wish I had the same skills in that sort. But he would tell me all these things. He was the type of dad that would always paint a picture for you that he was getting better. He was like, I would quit. I'm gonna quit smoking. I'm going to be around more. I'm going to get healthier. My heart's deteriorating, and I'm going to get healthier. By the time he died, he had 3 triple bypasses and the balloon thing in his heart, whatever all that stuff meant and was. I don't know. I just know that when he finally did go, it was because he never actually did the things that he even said he was going to do from the time I was a child. So he had the intention to always grow and be better. He really wanted to, and I think he just never had a real reason to. He never had anything push him completely over the edge because he always had a fallback. He had his parents who had money and they had resources, and they could, at least, even if it made them struggle, they would give. So he never really had to feel like there was nothing you have to change, you have to grow, you have to be different. Never had any of that. And I'm, I to be fair, I I kind of envied that position he was in, but I don't. I don't now. Now that I realize it, I don't envy someone who is given the help that they want, holding them back from the growth that they could achieve. So my dad and I, he built a lot of trust issues with me, and so he would constantly tell me these crazy tales and what he was gonna do, and that he was gonna be around, and then he would back out. I wouldn't see him for months, weeks, whatever the case was, and it would change based on the scenario. He would come up and stay. He lived in Florida for a lot of it, my childhood, between the ages of I'd say 5 to 9, 8 or 9. He's kind of back and forth, back and forth. And then he finally decided to try to come up and stay and get his own place. And I was a little older at the time. So I was all for staying with him. I'm like, let me get out of my grandparents' house. I'm sick of these people. They they were they loved me, but there were situations in the home that weren't really great, and they weren't. I was hoping to get a family. I wanted a father. I wanted somebody to directly love me and be there for me. And so I just, I did my best to try to talk him into letting me come stay with him. In our first apartment, it was no heat, no heat at all. We had a kerosene heater in the middle of the floor, and the whole house always smelled like kerosene. And it was like a minute walk from school, but I'm going to school smelling like fuel. I'm feeling sick. Like, I'm not able to concentrate anymore. My dad and me and my uncle were all smoking weed every night. And yeah, it wasn't every single night, but it was a lot. And so I thought I was in there. I thought it was cool, and I didn't realize that, I wasn't getting the dad. I was getting a friendship with my dad. I was getting a buddy. He wasn't looking at me as like, this is somebody I need to protect and grow and put into and give to. He was looking at it as like, well, if I'm at least nice to him, and I'm there, everything's fine. And that at first was great. As a little 9, 8, 9, 10 year old kid, that was awesome. I thought I was the man. And it took some time to really start realizing that, you know, that he had some mental things holding him back. And it was him. It was him. So it was, the drugs, the alcohol, the choices, everything he was doing. He could have controlled every single thing within his own life. But I think when I really, really noticed it, it was kind of after this. We went back to my grandparents' house, and I had heard from my mom, first time ever, from the age of 3 to whatever age I was, 8, 9, or 10. And I remember she was coming to West Virginia to visit with me. She wanted to take me out to eat. She was talking about going shopping, all these things. My dad kind of knew, and I kind of knew she was going to try to take me and not give me back, because they never really had any real child thing. She was supposed to pay child support to him, which he benefited from, and never, I can promise you, I never seen a dime of that. But she really wanted to stop having to pay those child support things, which I can understand. My it was the first time I seen my dad really go from, I couldn't tell the full feelings he was having, but I know that when she actually showed up, I seen him. I was up in the top floor of the house, and I see them. They're in a convertible. They pull up. They're ready to go. And my dad walks out, and he's like, "Stay inside. Don't go outside." And he's arguing with them, and then he comes back inside and tells me I ain't going. I'm like, okay, I thought that's what I was gonna do. I was gonna get to meet my mom. I'd never met her. I was struggling. I wanted this parent. I needed a parent in my life. I needed someone to love me specifically. And I never had that. My grandparents did a good job at loving me and my cousins, but it was as burdens almost because we were their kids and they didn't want to raise three kids of their own. It was me, my two cousins, and they were pretty much raising us for a long period of time, and they were older themselves. They wanted to calm down and settle down. They wanted to do their own thing. And there's just so many family structural issues going on here. But it was the first time I realized that my dad was using me as an object. He didn't care about how I felt about the situation at all. He realized that she was going to take me. He wouldn't have me for the financial part of it. And so, I was hurt. I was kind of like, why can't I at least talk to him or meet him or whatever? Like, I talked to her over the phone, but that was it. And the all I knew of her really was the fact that they all used her name as an insult. They would say, "You're acting just like Dolly. You're acting just like Dolly," and then badmouth her constantly. So they were always applying her name to me and my connection to her as an insult whenever I wasn't acting the way they liked or whatever. And so that's all I really knew of that situation. And another part later down was the affection side of things. Like my grandma and my grandpa, they loved us. They'd give us a hug or whatever, but it wasn't very often. It wasn't all the time. They had their own things. But I really tried to reach out to my dad for some love and affection and just a hug. One time he was leaving West Virginia to go back down to Florida, and I didn't know how long I had no idea how long he was going to be down there. It could have been months, it could have been years. He never actually knew. He was just saying he would go, and then that would be that. And so I went up to the door, and I was like, I really, really wanted a hug, and I went in for it, and I'm kind of just standing there, and he didn't want to give me a hug. I'm like, that's weird. And my grandma was standing right there, and she's like, you give that boy a hug right now. And she set him straight. But I knew that hug wasn't real. I knew that hug was forced. It wasn't what I wanted. It meant nothing to me at that point. Once the authenticity was gone, it meant nothing to me. Now, what I really want to get to is all that. I'm just kind of building the story. It's how I remember and it's what I know of it. Yeah, it's all perspective, and none of that really actually matters. The stories and the hurt and the things that are holding you back that you can victimize yourself and hold on to for the rest of your life if you choose. But all those things really just stop you from going to the next level of forgiveness. The hardest part of it was when it got to physical abuse. I could forgive all the other things very, very easily. As even young, when I was younger, I could understand them and I could work around them. He wasn't trying to manipulate. He would bend the truth and lie, but they were so simple of lies that you could read right through them. So there was no manipulation that he could do that I couldn't already see through and I didn't already know was going to happen. And so it really came down to the physical abuse from the women in his life. I was genuinely a kid that was, I'd give respect. I would respect every adult that I could until there was conflict, until I was being wrongly accused of something, which wasn't always the case. If I did something, I did something. I'm not going to sit there. my dad wasn't the type to really care. He just, if I really did something, I could tell him. I didn't have to. He'd already made all the mistakes in the world. He didn't really care. He'd probably cheer me on if I did something wrong. But with his girlfriends, they would come in, they would act all sweet in the beginning, and then when he wasn't around, they would twist up and they'd become different. They would change. We would get into small scuffles, and then it'd turn into a full-blown fight when there was any confrontation or difference of opinion, down to the point that it would even be a fist fight. And so my dad would come home, and I'd been in a fist fight or thrown up against the wall by this woman that I barely knew, and he would be on her side. He knew that she was actually providing something for him, whether it was sex or money or a place to stay or anything like that. She was useful to him. I could handle it. He could, whatever. So with that, that was one thing that I really found hard to come back from. It was like it ended up getting worse and worse, and to be with different women. Like he ended up getting married again, and with this new woman, he her name was Sherry, and they were trying to build a life together. She seemed very nice in the beginning, and I was really hopeful to find some kind of mother figure in this lady, and she played the game good for a while. But they lasted about a year before she started kind of getting iffy, and me and her started having conflicts, really. And one of the biggest ones was I like to collect Yu-Gi-Oh cards. It was like the only thing I could collect, and I had this book that my uncle got for me. He like stole half the cards from the gas station that I had, but I was collecting cards. I wanted something for myself. And I remember they went missing. And we were in the next town over where her family, her son and her ex-husband and his wife lived, and she had a son and a daughter. And I remember I was hanging out with them because I ran into them in the street randomly, and we were talking about. I had it in my mind. I was like, I wonder if they have my Yu-Gi-Oh cards, like if they had seen them. Or so I asked the son. I'm like, hey, do you have any Yu-Gi-Oh cards? Do you have anything like that? And he's like, yeah, I got some. So he runs inside and he grabs them and he brings them out, and sure enough, it's my cards. It's my book. It's all the cards are in the same place that I had them. They were my cards. And I call him out. I'm like, those are mine. Your mom took them and stole them and gave them to you. And he's like, no, she said she got these. She bought these for me. Like she said she did this. And I'm like, no, and he's arguing with me and fighting with me. I knew I was right. I knew. Um, these Yu-Gi-Oh cards have actually been with me through a lot. They made it through a flood with me. They they just they I was felt like it was filling a hole for me, and it was hurt that I was hurt that they were gone, and I was hurt that somebody took them from me. And so I go back to the apartment that my dad and his wife and my aunt were at, and they're all playing music and having fun. And I call her out. I tell her, I'm like, you stole my cards and gave them to your son. And she loses it, flips a lid. And I remember I was standing next to my dad because I wanted that protection, because I was like, she's gonna lose it, and she did. And I'm like behind a couch, kind of. It was like a cat corner couch away from the wall. So it's a wall and then the cat corner couch. And then I'm standing right there with my dad in the corner of the room. He's like 2 feet away. She walks past him and just starts hitting me, throwing me to the ground. I'm pinned behind this couch. I'm getting beat down on, and he's just watching, not saying a word. My aunt isn't saying anything, which, even though me and her never had a great relationship, normally she'd be the type to fight for family, but she didn't. She stood by, and my dad stood by, and it was the first real abandonment. Like, I knew that that was wrong, and it turned out that the dad and the stepmom, her ex, um, and the two kids came over in the car, dropped off the cards because they knew, and they returned them to me. They knew what was wrong, and I remember them. They were like so sorry. They knew what had happened. They knew. I'm pretty sure I told them that she just beat the crap out of me for these things. And so now I have the cards back, and I'm thankful for the cards, but at the same time, I just lost something even more. I lost so much from that moment, from my dad and my family structure that I was just trying to hold on to. And that was so hard to forgive. And I realized that, the more I go down through it, and I really tried to understand why all those things happened. And I don't fully grasp it just yet, I guess. There's parts to this where it's like, okay, I know that he didn't he had to feel bad for that. I know that some part of him never healed from that situation. As much as he acted like it or never really brought it back up or anything, like, he was there for that moment and he witnessed it and he let that happen. And then he found out the truth in the end. So, I can forgive him for the ideas that he didn't know any better. His capacity was in his mind was stuck at still being a kid. He had never actually grew up. He thought he could party and play and have fun and be with women and do all those things that he did the same as when he was 14, 15, 16 years old, growing up in Florida. I could tell he wanted to change because he always would bring it up. He would use that as a staple of, like, he would tell you, hey, these are the things that I want to change. And it would always be the basic things: quitting smoking, quitting eating bad, being there, doing better, getting a home, providing, whatever. It never happened, not once, but he knew that there was a starting point. So I think part of him wanted to change. But he was a product of his environment. He was a product of his ancestry. He had things on his heart and on his mind that he didn't have the tools to understand. And I can forgive that because I've been in the same boat. I've hurt people. I've done things wrong. I've not stood up in situations that I should have. I have stayed silent when I should have said something. The difference is I seen how bad that hurt me. So when I turned around and did those things, something switched. I don't want to be like that. I don't want to do that. So let's actually change it. Let's be different. And that was up to me. It was always a choice. And a lot of it took time and effort, and some I'm still working on. But that's the journey of it. You're never going to just instantly heal from everything you've ever been through. There's always one more thing coming up, and you're just emptying out the luggage bag. But starting is the most beautiful thing, because then you can start to see that there's a tunnel to be walked. There's a path to be followed. And I know he loved me. I could always sense that he loved me, and he never actually physically wanted to hurt me himself. He would actually be the complete opposite. The only time he ever put his hands on me was once, and that was out of a situation. It was completely called for because I was off the rails. And he died, I think it was back in 2019, and I wasn't anywhere around. I was living quite far away. And I got a call that he was in a vegetative state on his deathbed. And I got one phone call with him before they finally pulled the plug. and I got to forgive him. I forgave him then, knowing I was still angry with him, knowing all these things were still a problem. They were playing a part of my life currently at the time. Then I still didn't fully understand them. But I forgave him. I owned up and I was like, okay, this is gonna be the last time I ever talk to my dad. And he may not be able to hear me, but if he can, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna forgive him because I want him to have that peace. I want him to know that I did love him. And so I did that. And that felt good, but it felt confusing. Little did I know that I would end up forgiving him. I didn't know if I was going to, but I ended up. I now I know. I love him for who he was. Thanks to him, I was able to see a lot of things in this life, and I was able to change a lot of patterns that were passed down to me from my family. And now the family line, the name, the everything, it gets to be different, and we get to build a different story based off of right now and going forward. So, you know, I can appreciate the hurt. It's a teacher. It's a leader. You don't learn from just getting comfortable and being happy all the time and being loved all the time. Getting into that nitty gritty dark side of life and being truly hurt by the people that loved you or supposed to love you, that you wanted to love you, that you loved. And it may take years to heal from it. You may hurt a lot of people with those things that you learned. And it's going to hurt even going back and remembering the times that you hurt the people with the same tools and the same weapons that hurt you. But you always have a chance to stop and start that process of forgiving yourself, forgiving the people around you, and apologizing to the ones that you can that are still around or that you can still get into contact with. You can't apologize to everyone. That's just not going to be possible. There's going to be a lot of people that get hurt. And some may have been so little that you didn't even remember it or it wasn't something that comes to mind. But there's some in there that everybody knows. You get that feeling around it, or it keeps popping back up in your mind randomly, like maybe something similar happens and you remember that instantly. Like, there are people you can apologize to, and whether or not they were wrong or you were wrong or they were right or you were right, can you apologize? Can you forgive yourself for your part in it? It doesn't matter if everyone else is right. Like, I could sit here and say, my dad was wrong. He was wrong. He was terrible. He was bad. But what does that do? That does nothing but keep me in a place where I'm always trying to be the victim. My hate for him fuels me to be the same as him. And the older you get, the more you can realize like where they were coming from. Or the more you try to understand them, the more you can see what position they were given. Were they given the tools to in the same way you were? Like, we live in a digital age. Like, I can sit here and I can listen to people break down psychological processes and explain how, parental patterns shape this and that and this. Thankfully, because those things allowed me to get to a point where I can process and heal from those past traumas. Yes, I wanted to, and yes, I was searching. It took that, me wanting to and searching. But more so, it took the information being available. And that's what we're blessed with now. And it may seem like there's just so much information out there, but that's a good thing. Where it's so vast now that people can find help for themselves in ways that really suit them. So that's my dad's side. I'm gonna go into my mom's side another day, and I'm gonna post it. They were two completely different scenarios. And like I said, this was the easier one to forgive. But if you have a parent in your life that you look at as a cause of some of the way or the problems that you live with now and some of the ways you look at the world, try to understand them. Maybe if you still are on talking terms, maybe sit down with them and ask them their childhood. How did they grow up? Give them and really listen. Like, what are the things that they went through that maybe they never had the opportunity to heal from? And that can set you free from having to feel like maybe they're overprotective. Maybe because, you know, either they didn't get any protection as a child or they were also overprotected. So I mean, you never know what it is. A lot of times humans like to jump from one spectrum to the other. If it's your dad's an alcoholic, maybe a bad example, but your dad's an alcoholic and you grow up to be a pothead. But it may be different ends. You're never going to touch alcohol, you're never going to be the same, but you're still reliant and addicted to things. Like, you still have that pattern underlying everything. Or maybe you get addicted to working, and being successful so much that you forget about everything else around you. You never know you have to be honest with yourself, the patterns that you have, and see how your parents played a part in that, and then try to understand why they had those same patterns too. And it could go back and back and back and back to a point that you're never going to get information. But it's going to lead you down a path of, I can forgive and I can understand, and I'm actually trying to look at it in a different way. So I hope this helps you, and it helps me a lot because I get to sit here and go through some of the dark things that sit in my mind, and I've really been wanting to go about this in a way that helps me process this, and I can put it on paper all day, but to sit here and actually talk about it fulfills me in a way. So if you made it this long, I appreciate it, and I hope you have a great day.